not because your face has changed, but because your presence, your energy, your mind, has become something unshakable. Your posture is different, upright, grounded. Your thoughts move with clarity, not chaos. Your eyes, they carry the weight of someone who's seen storms and decided not to run, but to stand. Can you imagine that version of you? Now pause, and be honest. How many times have you promised yourself you'd change, but didn't? How often have you waited for the right time? Next week, next month, when things settle down, when life finally gives you space. But what if I told you that's the lie? What if the transformation you're waiting for doesn't wait for peace? What if it's forged right in the middle of the noise, in the mess, the pressure, the overwhelm? That's what the Stoics understood. They didn't seek comfort. They trained in discomfort. They didn't wait for life to calm down. They learned to stand tall while the storm raged on. Marcus Aurelius ruled an empire. He knew chaos intimately, and yet every day he wrote to himself, not to boast, but to remember who he was trying to become. That's what this is. Not a speech, not motivation, but a mirror. A call to meet the version of yourself who already lives within you, not someday, but starting now. Because the truth is, you don't change by avoiding friction. You change by moving through it, with purpose. So let me ask you something. When was the last time you did something uncomfortable, on purpose? Not to suffer, but to grow? Maybe the real you, the one you were always meant to become, isn't hiding. Maybe they're just waiting for you to stop waiting. And that moment? It begins now. Let's be honest. Most people run from discomfort like it's the enemy. Cold showers? Too harsh. Silence? Too awkward. Skipping breakfast? Why suffer? But what if the very things we avoid are the exact things that could forge us into someone stronger? See, the Stoics, they didn't wait for life to test them. They invited the test. Not because they were masochists, but because they knew growth isn't built in comfort. It's earned in discomfort. Think about it. You don't sharpen a blade by stroking it gently. You put it in fire. You pound it with force. You shape it with discipline. And you are no different. Every morning is an opportunity, not to check your phone, not to scroll, but to choose one small act of resistance. One voluntary discomfort that reminds you who's in charge. Take a cold shower, walk barefoot on rough ground, sit in silence with no distractions, skip a meal, not to punish your body, but to train your mind. These aren't punishments, they're practices, mental reps that harden your focus and quiet your craving for ease. Because here's the truth, you won't rise to your goals when life falls apart. You'll fall to the level of your training. And if all you've been training for is comfort, then when the storm hits, and it will, you won't be ready. That's not negativity, that's preparation. Seneca said, "We suffer more in imagination than in reality." But when you've trained in discomfort, when you've walked into the fire by choice, your imagination stops scaring you. You stop being at the mercy of mood. You stop needing life to be easy in order to show up. And instead, you become the kind of person who doesn't flinch. So ask yourself today, what one act of discomfort can I choose? Not to break me, but to build me. Because the person you're becoming, they're not forged in peace. They're built in pressure. We live in a world full of noise, always on, always connected, always avoiding. But what if the thing we're really running from isn't out there? What if it's in here, inside us? Carl Jung once said, "People will do anything, no matter how absurd, to avoid facing their own soul." And he was right. That's why most people don't take cold showers. Not because the water hurts, but because the stillness afterward, the silence, it exposes something deeper. That moment when your breath is heavy, your heart is racing, and suddenly, there's nothing left to distract you. No scrolling, no noise, just you and what you've been avoiding. The cold isn't the problem. The early morning alarm isn't the enemy. The The skipped meal isn't suffering. They're all just mirrors, revealing the quiet truths we keep burying under comfort. That's what discipline really is. Not punishment, but presence. Each act, waking early, fasting, walking alone without music, becomes a mental rep. Not to impress anyone, but to build something deep inside. Inner gravity. Because transformation doesn't happen when you feel like it. It happens when you choose it, especially on the days you don't. That's the fire. And you can't walk around it. You have to walk through it. The Stoics knew this. They didn't wait to be tested by life. They trained for it. In advance. So when the storm came, they didn't panic. They were ready. Because here's the truth. Real strength isn't loud. It doesn't shout. It doesn't beg for attention. It's quiet. Steady. Unshakable. And you build that strength not by chance, but by choice. So what if the discomfort you've been avoiding is actually the path you've been searching for? What if your peace isn't on the other side of ease, but on the other side of discipline? Start there. One act, one decision, one step into the fire, and when you come out the other side, you won't just feel different. You'll be someone new. Let me ask you something. When was the last time you truly trusted yourself? Not just hoped you'd show up, but knew you would? Most people think trust is something you build with others, but the deepest kind of trust is the one you build with yourself, and it doesn't come from speeches, or goals, or those once-a-year resolutions. It comes from small, consistent, almost invisible choices, made daily, even when no one's watching, especially when no one's watching. See, real transformation doesn't arrive with a spotlight. It doesn't knock on your door with a grand announcement. It sneaks in, quietly, through repetition, like waking up early when it's still dark, like showing up to your journal when your mind wants to scroll, like going for that silent walk, again, even when it feels boring. Over time, those small moments begin to shape how you see yourself. And suddenly, you're not hoping to be disciplined. You are disciplined. You're not trying to be calm. You've become someone who carries calm with them. That's the shift. It's not glamorous, it's not Instagram-worthy, but it's powerful. Socrates once said, "The unexamined life is not worth living." But you can't examine your life through chaos. You need rhythm. You need stillness. You need something that grounds you, day after day. That's what these daily acts are, not routines, but rituals, sacred commitments to who you're becoming. Because the truth is, self-trust isn't built through motivation. It's built through memory. The memory of all the times you kept your promise. Even when it was hard, even when no one cared, even when your old self begged you to quit. And here's what no one tells you. That quiet confidence, it grows. It anchors you. Until one day, you stop needing to hype yourself up. You simply move. Because you no longer need to prove who you are, you've already become it. It's a strange thing, isn't it? You start changing. You build discipline. You rise before the sun. You say no to what once controlled you. You stand taller, not just in posture, but in spirit. And then, something subtle creeps in. A voice. Software seductive. Look how far you've come. You're better than them now. You've figured it out. That voice, that's not confidence. That's ego, wearing a very convincing disguise. And if you're not careful, it will turn your growth into a performance, your silence into superiority, your strength into self-righteousness. See, ego doesn't knock on the door loudly. It seeps in quietly, right when you think you've outgrown it. It shows up in your need to correct, to be seen, to be right. But here's the truth. You don't grow because you're right. You grow when you let go of needing to be. That's the difference between knowledge and wisdom. Knowledge says, I know more. Wisdom says, I don't need to prove it. Marcus Aurelius ruled an empire. He could have commanded every room, crushed every voice. But instead, he wrote in private journals about humility, about restraint, about the danger of letting praise distort your purpose. Because the moment you need to be right, you've already lost something more important: your peace. The Stoics understood this. They didn't waste time correcting the world. They corrected themselves. So ask yourself, do I need to win, or do I need to stay rooted? Because real strength doesn't shout, it doesn't defend, it doesn't rise every time it's challenged. Sometimes it simply smiles and lets go. Because that's the power ego can't understand. The quiet confidence of someone who no longer needs to prove who they are. There's a quiet kind of strength that most people overlook. It doesn't come from shouting the loudest, or proving you're right, or correcting everyone who misunderstands you. Real strength is knowing you could say something, but choosing not to. Let them cut you off mid-sentence. Let them misinterpret your silence as weakness. Let them walk away thinking they won. Because here's the truth. It's not about them. It's about you. It's about your center, and whether it can be shaken by opinions you don't control. Marcus Aurelius once wrote, "You don't have to turn this into something. It doesn't have to upset you." That line? It's not passive. It's powerful. It's the wisdom to choose peace over pride, stillness over struggle, presence over performance. Because every time you resist the urge to react, every time you breathe instead of biting back, you're building something rare, a self that's no longer ruled by impulse. Now, don't get this wrong. This isn't about being silent forever. It's not about tolerating disrespect. It's about recognizing that not every battle is worth your peace. And the more you practice this pause, this breath, this stillness, the stronger you become. You start noticing things, that your mind doesn't race as much, that your chest doesn't tighten every time someone says something wrong, that your identity is no longer hooked to control. That's when the shift happens. You stop needing the last word. You stop trying to win the moment. And instead, you win something greater. Your presence, your clarity, your freedom. Carl Jung believed that what irritates us about others often reveals what we still need to heal within ourselves. So the next time someone pushes your buttons, pause. Not to suppress, not to ignore, but to understand. That moment of silence, that's your training ground. That's where mastery begins, not in the noise, but in your choice not to echo it. Close your eyes for a moment. Now, imagine rising above your life. Not metaphorically, visually, like a satellite slowly lifting from Earth's surface. You float past your home, your neighborhood, your city. And suddenly, the things that felt so overwhelming, that email, that argument, that one careless comment, they all look small. This is called the view from above, and the Stoics practiced it for a reason. Marcus Aurelius, Emperor of Rome, wrote about this in his private journals. At the end of each day, he would remind himself how brief life is, how vast the universe, and how insignificant most of our daily worries truly are. Not to detach from reality, but to return to it with perspective. You see, when you zoom out, you stop being pulled into every tiny drama, every urgent-sounding problem, every emotional flare-up. You begin to see what actually matters. Urgency fades, clarity rises, and what once felt like a crisis just becomes a moment. Here's the truth most of us forget. Your emotions are real, but they're not reliable. They spike, they twist, they explode, and then they vanish. They're like weather. And if you let every emotional storm steer your day, you'll spend your whole life chasing clouds. That's why this practice matters. It's not about ignoring your feelings. It's about observing them from a healthy distance. That one breath, that pause before reacting, that silent mental ascent to a higher view can change everything. Because when you rise above the noise, you realize you don't have to carry it. And that's where strength lives, not in controlling the world, but in choosing what gets your energy. So the next time you feel pulled into a spiral, try this. Step back, zoom out, and ask yourself, will this still matter in 5 years? Is this truly urgent or just loud? Am I responding from wisdom or from panic? The view from above doesn't solve your problems, but it shrinks them into something manageable. And from that height, you remember something powerful, that you are more than this moment, more than this emotion, more than this tension. You are the observer, and the observer always has a choice. We've been taught to always look forward, set goals, chase dreams, add more, do more, be more. But what if the real path to clarity wasn't about adding at all? What if it started with subtracting? Instead of asking, what do I want to achieve this month? Try asking this. What am I no longer available for? What am I done carrying? What will I no longer explain, justify, or tolerate? Because sometimes growth isn't about chasing, it's about releasing. It's saying, I refuse to keep explaining myself to people who don't actually listen. I refuse to perform stress just because the world is noisy. I refuse to chase approval when silence would serve me better. These are not small choices. These are declarations, and they shape your emotional landscape more than any to-do list ever could. See, we don't burn out because we're doing too much. We burn out because we're investing our energy in things that give us nothing back. Noise, obligation, endless performing for people who were never meant to understand us. But here's what the Stoics understood deeply. Freedom doesn't come from having more. It comes from needing less. Less justification, less comparison, less chasing. Because true mastery isn't about stacking more tools, more systems, more hustle. It's about stripping away everything that dilutes your presence. The fewer things you try to be for others, the closer you get to who you actually are. And in that space, where there's less noise, your values can finally breathe. Your boundaries take shape. Your vision sharpens. You realize that a meaningful life isn't built by overcommitting, but by honoring your energy like it matters. So maybe this month isn't about what you'll accomplish. Maybe it's about what you'll walk away from, what roles you'll stop playing, what thoughts you'll stop entertaining, what pressures you'll stop pretending are yours to carry. You don't need more to become more. You just need less of what you never needed in the first place. This is what it means to live with intention, not to control everything, but to choose what's worthy of your time, your spirit, your peace. Start there, not with a to-do list, but with a refusal list. Because sometimes the strongest thing you can say is, no more. Sometimes we make transformation too complicated. We think it takes 30 habits, 10 new apps, a strict schedule, and a long list of rules. But what if it only took one act? Just one small, consistent behavior that you do with full presence every single day, like a quiet promise to yourself. A cold shower, a silent walk at sunrise, a paragraph in a journal, written honestly, without filters. Not to impress anyone, not to check a box, but to anchor yourself. Because Carl Jung once said, "You are what you do, not what you say you'll do." And that truth, it's humbling, but also liberating, because it means you don't have to perform change. You just have to show up, daily, deliberately, with care. This one act becomes your fingerprint, your signature, your quiet rebellion against distraction, inconsistency, and self-doubt. It's the thing that says, this is who I am, not who I wish to be someday, but who I am now, in this moment. Over time, you stop needing reminders. You stop forcing motivation. The act becomes a rhythm, and the rhythm becomes you. You won't have to announce your transformation. You'll carry it. In your posture, in your voice, in how you pause before reacting. in how you begin again after falling short. That's the beauty of repetition. It doesn't just change behavior, it reshapes identity. And it happens not with noise, but with quiet consistency. You don't rise by accident. You rise by choice. Small, steady, unshakable choice. Every morning. Every evening. Even on the days you don't feel like it. Especially on those days. So, what's your act? What is one thing you can do each day, not perfectly, but faithfully, to become the person you already know you're meant to be? It doesn't have to be big, it just has to be real, rooted in presence, done with care, and repeated until the act stops being effort and starts being you. By now, maybe you've noticed something. Change doesn't come from bursts of motivation. It doesn't come from scattered attempts, dramatic breakthroughs, or perfect plans. It comes from something quieter, more subtle, more honest. Commitment. Not the kind you shout about, but the kind that shows up day after day, even when no one's watching. Aristotle once wrote, "We are what we repeatedly do." Excellence, then, is not an act, but a habit. And that habit? That one small decision you make each day, to wake with purpose, to breathe before reacting, to speak with intention, to hold your ground with grace. That's what shapes you. Over time, those acts start to shift something deeper than behavior. They begin to shape your posture, not just physically, but spiritually. They change your voice, not just how you speak, but what you stand for. They transform your presence, not in loud ways, but in unmistakable ones. You don't have to tell people you've changed. They'll feel it. Because transformation isn't about proving anything anymore. It's about embodying clarity. And clarity doesn't chase approval. It doesn't seek permission. It doesn't beg to be seen. It simply is. You've stopped trying to become. You've started being. That version of you, grounded, focused, calm, resilient, was never somewhere far away. They were always here, just waiting for you to show up, every day, with quiet discipline and a clear yes to your values. So the next time you doubt yourself, don't ask, "Have I done enough today?" Ask, "Am I still aligned with who I've decided to be?" Because that's what matters. Not perfection, but direction. You don't need to be louder. You don't need to be busier. You just need to be rooted in what's real. And if you stay steady, if you keep walking this path with intention, eventually, without needing to announce it, you'll look around and realize you're no longer becoming. You already are.